David Martinez stood in the glass-walled conference room, hands trembling as he faced the executives. At the head sat Richard Caldwell, the CEO. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm here to request a raise. I need it to pay for my son's surgery. My son Lucas, he's 7. He has a congenital heart defect. He needs surgery in 2 months. I can't afford it." The hospital estimate was $92,400 after insurance. His savings, $7,200. Richard watched him. "Compensation reviews are in March. It's November. We don't make ad hoc exceptions." David slid charts across the table. "I've taken on 35% more workload. I saved the company $5.2 million last quarter." The CFO tapped his pen. "We froze raises. If we make an exception, we set a precedent." David gripped the table. "Please." Richard's gaze didn't waver. "The moment we tie compensation to individual hardships, we cease to be rational." "What's the point of a rational organization?" David said, voice shaking. "If it can't make a humane exception when a child's life is at stake." Richard looked down. "If we do this for you, we have to do it for everyone. I have to deny your request." David's breath came shallow. His chest tightened. "I'm asking for a chance to keep my son alive. I thought loyalty meant something. Loyalty does matter, but so do principles." The room swayed. David's fingers went numb. "Please," he whispered. The folder slipped. A crushing weight clamped his chest. His knees buckled. He fell. As he collapsed, he thought, "Lucas, I'm sorry." The HR director knelt beside him. "Call 911. Richard stood frozen. A crack appeared in the certainty he'd built his life upon. When David woke, he was in a hospital bed. "Lucas," he croaked. Dr. Santos touched his shoulder. "You're in St. Mary's. You collapsed. Your son is fine. You had stress-induced cardiomyopathy. Your body is under significant strain." She met his eyes. David almost laughed. "My wife died 2 years ago. My son needs surgery we can't afford. I work 70 hours a week for a company that just refused to help. Your heart can't keep going like this. If you continue, you're at risk for heart attack, stroke, worse." Dr. Santos's jaw tightened. "Maybe the backup plan starts with not sacrificing you." Later, David's mother Rosa appeared. "You scared us." David told her about the refusal. Rosa's voice shook. "That man told you your child's life wasn't a good enough reason?" Dr. Santos returned. "Unless something changes, we're just putting a bandage on a wound. You may need medical leave, but if you keep going, you may not be here for your son's next birthday." That night, David realized, if he kept living this way, the story Lucas would inherit would be of a man ground down by a system. A new thought. What if I stop asking for permission? The next morning, David saw a calendar invite. Debrief, incident. They were discussing his collapse like equipment. What if he told everyone the truth? Dr. Santos returned with a form. "I've drafted medical leave, 8 weeks. She paused. "Sometimes, the bravest thing is stopping." David opened his laptop. He typed, "All staff." This could cost him his job, but he remembered Lucas. He began to type. He wrote about Lucas's heart condition, his wife's death, the long hours. He described his request, Richard's refusal, the collapse. We talk about risk management as numbers, but there is human risk we never quantify. Moral injury when we force people to choose between health and livelihood. Yesterday, my body collapsed. If you're reading this and feeling something crack, no, it's not weakness. It's a rational response to an irrational system. He ended. "I am taking medical leave. I don't know if I'll have a job when this is over. But what terrifies me more is continuing to participate in a system that asks us to sacrifice our humanity for policy. I believe we can do better." He clicked, send. Meanwhile, the meeting began when phones buzzed. Richard's phone vibrated. Subject, "Why I collapsed." Sender, David Martinez. Recipients, all staff. Color drained from his face. By the end, Richard felt as if someone had dropped the moral framework he'd built. The line that lodged, "What terrifies me more is continuing to participate in a system that asks us to sacrifice our humanity." The HR director spoke quietly. "It's true, we refused. Now he's in the hospital." She met his gaze. "Sometimes an anecdote is a data point that shows what your metrics are missing." A part of him wanted to clamp down, but another part remembered his father's hardware store. He was at a crossroads. "Postpone this debrief," he said. "This is a human crisis. I want a full review of our policies. I want real stories, not just metrics. That's going to open us up to complaints," the CFO said. Richard met his gaze. "We also have exposure now. Our employees know a man begged and collapsed when we refused. If our response is defensive, we'll lose their trust." He paused. "And we will not discipline David for this email. Not all precedents are bad. Sometimes they mark the moment you stop doing the wrong thing." Richard stayed behind alone. For the first time, Richard felt the weight of his power not as pride, but as grave responsibility. He made a decision. He would go to the hospital. At St. Mary's, Richard approached the desk. "I'm here to see David Martinez. Room 312. Keep it brief." Richard walked down the hall, paused, then knocked and stepped inside. David looked smaller in the bed. He turned his head. Recognition. His expression hardened. "Mr. Caldwell, I didn't realize medical leave included surprise visits." Richard stepped closer. "David, I read your email. Pretty sure the whole company has." Richard sat. "You're right. You came for help. I refused. Then you collapsed. I've been telling myself those are separate, but you walked into that room carrying more than I allowed myself to see." David stared, startled. "I wasn't expecting you here." Richard exhaled. "Your email was difficult to read. Not because it was unfair, but because it was accurate. I've spent years telling myself sticking to policy is fairest. But your story made me realize our data is incomplete." "That's what this feels like," David said. "The system keeps putting me in positions where any choice hurts someone I love." Richard nodded. "When I was 16, my father's hardware store went under. He'd extended credit to struggling customers. After that, he drilled into me that you cannot run a business on pity. That's partly why I defaulted to, we can't set a precedent." "So this was about your dad, not my son?" Richard winced. "Both. But your email forced me to confront. The structure might already be cracked, not because of too much compassion, but too little. I need my son to get his surgery." Richard looked up. "What if I told you I'm willing to reconsider? Not just your case, but the policies." David's eyes narrowed. "Reconsider how?" "I can authorize a hardship grant from our executive fund. I can commit to covering whatever your insurance doesn't, up to the full surgery estimate. Yesterday there was no way, but today there is? What changed?" Richard didn't flinch. "What changed was that I let your story in. Really in. Not as an anomaly, but as evidence. I can't undo yesterday. I can choose differently, today. And after me? What happens when the next employee comes? I've asked HR to lead a comprehensive review. Compensation, workload, support for family medical issues. I want us to build a formal mechanism for hardship exceptions. Transparent, with clear criteria. How do I know it won't get buried?" Richard considered. "You don't. Not yet. Trust is earned over time. All I can tell you is this has shaken me. I don't want to be the man in your story." Something in David's expression softened. "When I was lying on that floor, I thought about my son. If I died there because I pushed myself past my breaking point for a company that couldn't bend, that would be the story my son grew up with. I can't accept that." Richard swallowed. "Nor should you. You wrote that what terrifies you is participating in a system that asks you to sacrifice your humanity. That line has been echoing. I built this system, but if stability means grinding down the people whose work sustains it, then it's not stability. It's exploitation. I can't fix the whole world, but within the sphere I control, I can start making different choices." There was a knock. Rosa stepped in, eyes widening. "Am I interrupting?" David smiled. "It's okay, Mama. This is Richard, my CEO." Her jaw tightened. "So you're the one who told him no?" "Yes," Richard said. "I am. And I was wrong." Rosa blinked. "Most men in your position wouldn't say that. I used policy as a shield. I'm trying to take responsibility. I've told David what we're going to do to help with Lucas's surgery." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "You're really going to help?" "Yes. Not as charity. As a correction." David felt relief and grief. "Thank you. But I need you to understand. Even if you pay for the surgery, I'm not going back to being who I was. I wouldn't ask you to. When you're ready, if you're willing, I'd like you to be part of the team rethinking how we do things. David let out a slow breath. You want me to help fix the mess? Richard nodded. Precisely because you did that. You saw a problem and refused to keep quiet. That kind of courage is rare. I don't know yet, but I will say, if I come back, it'll be on different terms. I'm not going to work 70 hours a week. That's exactly the clarity we need. He stood. I'll have HR coordinate on the financial arrangements. Your son needs you alive more than I need you in a meeting. David almost smiled. That's the most rational thing I've heard from you yet. He hesitated. And I don't forgive you. Not yet. But I appreciate that you came. Richard inclined his head. You don't owe me forgiveness. What I owe you is action. He turned to go, then paused. How's Lucas? He's upstairs. Loves dinosaurs. Richard smiled. Smart kid. If it's all right, I'd like to send him a book about space. David nodded. But if you really want to do something for him, make sure the world he grows up in doesn't punish people for needing help. I'll try, starting with the part I can influence. He glanced at Rosa. Thank you for taking care of him. She studied him, then nodded. What will really prove who you are is what things look like a year from now. I understand. I hope in a year I'll have earned that belief. He left. Inside, David sank back, feeling drained but lighter. Rosa took his hand. How are you feeling? He exhaled. Like I just survived a different kind of surgery. But for the first time, I don't feel like I'm the only one holding the scalpel. Outside, Richard walked down the corridor. As he passed the pediatric wing, he glanced through a window and saw a boy with dark hair and a plastic dinosaur, laughing. He wondered if that was Lucas, but he did not go in. This was not the moment for symbolic gestures. There would be time later, if his actions proved worthy. For now, he carried the echo of David's words, of Rosa's challenge, of his own commitments. The confrontation had not ended with absolution. It had ended with something more valuable, a shared recognition that the way things had been was not inevitable, and that both men were now accountable for what came next. If you love stories where the truth is revealed, you've found your channel. Subscribe and turn on notifications to make sure you're always up to date with life's biggest secrets and dramas. And now, I want to hear from you. What life lesson did you learn from this story? Share your reflection in the comments and use the hashtag #TruthRevealed, also telling us the city you watched this drama from.